Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Incompetent Nerds. I am your host, Mark, back with Tank for another episode of Things People Are Nerds About. This month is June, and we are in honor of E3. We did E3 last week, but this month is going to be sort of dedicated, unofficially, to gaming and just gaming culture, since it is an important part of our lives, how we met and everything. So this week, we are going to tackle the book Console Wars by, hold on, I have the Wikipedia page. What? Does he? I can't even find it. Blake Harris, published in 2014.
Yep.
With a foreword by Seth Rogen, interesting, and Evan Goldberg. But I have not read the book. But Tank, why don't you give us the basic synopsis, and then we'll just jump in to wherever our heart takes us.
Sure thing. So the book starts off with Sega. It starts off with what's his name? Kalinsky, I think it was. Something Kalinsky. Give me one. God damn you, MacBook. It's asking for my damn password now. But it starts off with Sega. The head of Sega of Japan wanted another CEO of America. So he meets up with them in Hawaii, offers him the job. I want to say Kalinsky was very about it. Wasn't too sure, especially that the current CEO of Sega of America, they were good friends, and he already knew like this was not gonna go right with them. But he takes the job anyway because he sees what Sega has to offer and the future of gaming and everything, especially that Sega was gonna be using. Sega had their the Game Gear. Remember the little handheld? So brings him on board. He changes the whole thing, and it was mainly because of him. And this is why this book takes place. It was mainly because of him, because he brought Sega up from the ashes. Like Sega owned like a very small percentage. Now, some of the older listeners out there who grew up watching the Sega Nintendo commercials, like for example, Sega does when Nintendon't. That wasn't Kalinsky. Let me be sure.
Ooh, okay.
Let me be sure that's his name.
So this was sort of the beginning of the console wars, and sort of it basically didn't start with Sony and Microsoft, but it started with Sega and Nintendo back in the early 1990s.
Not even. Console wars started back when Atari and everything else, but the only difference was Sega and Nintendo were spending more money on marketing than any of these other companies ever did.
Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like it's one of those weird times in history where like you spend more to like outdo your competition, and like not necessarily on your product because you know you have a good product kind of thing. It's kind of like Coke and Pepsi. They're not like making new products, but they spend money on marketing because they can.
Exactly.
Got it.
So so with that said, wait, it's not even. I don't even think that's a ski. Is that pronounced ski? Kalinsky? Key? SKE? I mean, yeah, SKE is the last three. Okay, well, sorry, I'm probably murdering his
I'm not
man's
reading what
name.
you're reading, so.
Well, you're on the wiki.
You're doing the phonics hooked on. You're hooked on phonics in it.
I'm more like hooked on ebonics with it. So I'm about to get a lot of haters for that one. But what you call it?
Kalinsky.
There you go. He changed the whole thing around. He started to use. Sega gave him, I think, I forgot how much money on marketing, because this is when Sonic was just about to come out, and when they saw Sonic, they were like, "We have to do something. We had to make a change." And Sega, Sega Japan is not gonna like this. So he was the one that offered to them, we need to sell Sonic for free with a console. You want to sell consoles? You want to sell this game? It will make it big. And sure enough, Sega Japan was just not happy with it. But even the president at Sega Japan was not happy with his decisions. Like, what the hell? I put you in this power. Well, basically, even though you were, the head of Sega of America, you really had no power because Japan had it all. So, but he was telling them, you gave me this job. You gave me this job to fix this thing, to fix this company, fix this market in America. You got to give me that faith. He took that leap of faith, and Sega's share of the console market at the time, which was like, I think, a low, like maybe 10% or single digits, started rising up to like 30-40%. Started rising like 30-40%. Nintendo was just falling. Even though Nintendo brought out their Super Nintendo, which was a little bit late, the Genesis came out before the Super Nintendo, but they started to use certain things in their marketing strategy. For example, instead of the Sega does when Nintendon't, they started using certain like key phrases, like Sega uses blast processing, which offers faster gameplay, which was true. The Sega console did have a faster processor, but it's because of that it suffered with its graphics. So its less colors and less colors on your TV that it could output,
Right.
and there was also less they couldn't really pull like 3D off. They had to do like weird ways to pull off like this false 3D. Where when Nintendo was like, yeah, okay, our processor may not be that fast, but they were able to pull out great graphics. It was to pull off basically 3D Star Fox that came out for the Super Nintendo. That was all rendered in 3D, like real true polygon 3D. Then you had the sound on that system was way better because it was run by a Sony chip. So everything from there was just great. Now, reading this book, you literally see on the inside. You don't hear like all the news articles or whatever. This is all from people from within Nintendo and Sega. And right now,
and this is all for the Genesis, right?
Yep. No, this is all in the eyes of both Genesis. What you call it? This is in the eyes of both Nintendo and Sega. And you see how Genesis came about, and you see how the Super Nintendo. And they do discuss about how the Master System, which was the one before Genesis, and how the Nintendo, kind of rocked the world. Well, not even the Master System. Master System didn't rock the world at all, but how Nintendo did it. Right now, I am on. This book is about 100. Well, not even 1,154 pages.
Oh my god!
I am on page 317.
Okay,
Well, I'm on part 2. This part 2 is part of where it's called part 2 Sonic versus Mario. This is where now they start getting into the whole Nintendo Sega gave Nintendo of America. I mean, Sega Japan gave Sega of America a certain amount of money to use on marketing, and you were going to plan on using every single penny of that. And they were just killing it with the marketing, using certain celebrities, having certain ads play, advertisements in the streets, having certain events that they were like, we're going to do this. And one of the major things that we're going to make it change was getting a partnership with Walmart at that time.
Oh, okay.
Walmart didn't want to go with them. Walmart's like, well, Sega doesn't sell. Why should I put your games on my shelf when Nintendo, does this all the time? So what they do, they rented out an abandoned shop, rented that out, and literally created a Sega store that was literally next door to the Walmart.
To the Walmart? That's so cool.
And people were coming into that Sega store, so they was literally stealing their gamers. People were going in there and gaming, and that was to show them like, hey, still got another opportunity.
Yeah, so they didn't close the door for forever. They just were like, yeah, we're gonna show you what you're missing.
Yeah, and that's what they did. And it's just an interesting read that this was also gonna become a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and that's when what's his face?
Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen. I was going to say Joe
Yeah.
Rogan. Seth Rogen was trying to push it out to be a movie, because as you go farther into the book, you start to learn that Sony comes in on this, and how Sony just fucking wrecked shop. Now,
Mm-hmm.
throughout the console wars, I remember growing up, I had a Genesis and I had a Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Super Nintendo wasn't mine. My mama's boyfriend. They split up a long time ago when I was a kid, and fucker took this Nintendo. I was like, why?
How much were they back then? Do you
Shit.
remember?
I I was a kid, dude. Like,
Okay.
Genesis and Super Nintendo were late 80s. I was born 89.
Right.
So I was more of your PlayStation era, but I did have a Genesis. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say, I think the Genesis was at a time 350, and then they dropped it to 250 with Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then and then Nintendo, I think it was like 300. And this was
It's
like
interesting. It's interesting how like over the course of time, like consoles haven't really like
change.
gone up in price that much. They sort of stayed the same when they come out. I don't know. I think that's interesting. Maybe I'm reaching.
Yeah.
Like
I'm looking it up right now.
consoles haven't gone from like 200 to $800 between like one console to the next. You know what I mean? They're all in that like $200 to $400 range, and like they get cheaper as time goes on. And then obviously now there's like a used market, but
Okay, so the Nintendo Entertainment System came out. It was either $200 or $250. I guess
uh-huh.
some places were different.
Hmm.
The following one was another. It's just $200. The 64 was $200. The GameCube was $200, and so forth and so forth. Let's
Hmm.
see. Damn, Nintendo always stood around the $200 range. GameCube 200. The Wii was 250. Wii U was 350. Nintendo 6 was 300. Then let's see. Sega, look at this, 189. It was actually
Oh,
a lot
interesting.
higher than that. I think it was. No,
Interesting.
this is an actual. Yeah, this is actual launch. So it was 189, and they dropped it. I want to say to 150. The Saturn came out, and that was $400,
Wow.
and that console fell hard because they rushed it. So here's that console war. So when Sega and Nintendo were going at it, Sony wanted to get in on the business, especially that their plan was to go to CDs.
Hmm.
With CDs at the time, you had better quality. One, it was a cheaper media, and you had high storage. Now
Right.
the consoles were using cartridges, faster loading time, but they were expensive.
Right.
And also, you had to pay fees for the cartridges, which was through Nintendo or through Sega. So these publishers reverse engineer them, so they don't have to pay a damn thing, and was just selling their games out. So
Hmm.
now Sega and Nintendo Sega mainly, because that's what failed in there, and somebody reversed Sega, and they started losing money.
Hmm.
So now came the CD. Sony was the one who came. Sony and a couple other companies came out with the CD. Sony wanted to, make money on the gaming. They
So
saw
they
how
wanted to
big.
capitalize on the gaming because they made the CD.
Yeah, because they were looking towards that. A lot of these companies were looking towards that medium, because again, it was cheap. It was dirt
Right.
cheap to make, and also they had high storage at that time. 700 megabytes,
Hmm.
was boom. Is bigger than a lot of these cartridges.
Right.
Like the Nintendo, the average game was about 8 kilobytes. That's
Wow.
less than your photo that you take right now on your phone.
Right. That's crazy.
Um,
That's nothing.
That's nothing. Then the Super Nintendo, the average size of the game for that one was about, I think it was like 8 to 10 megabytes. So you
Wow.
got 8 to 16 kilobytes. Then it kind of went up to like 8 megabytes. Now you got these CDs that are suddenly like, hey, you could put 700 megabytes stored on this one CD.
Hmm.
So they're like, oh my god, you could create all this type of this content. So Sony was trying to get in there. They met with Sega. Sega said no. They met with Nintendo. Nintendo said yeah. They announced their partnership. Nintendo denounces their partnership, saying they're going with Philips. Sony's like, wait, what? So they go back to Sega. Sega says no. And they're like, you know what? Then this was Ken Kugaragi, who was the father of PlayStation. He was also trying to get this going as well. In the book is another gentleman who was working around in America, working with Nintendo of America to get them, on this new product.
So the book's nonfiction, right? This is all true.
This is all true. With some, creative freedoms in between, of course.
Right.
So as all this goes down, they report back to Ken Kugaragi, and Ken Kugaragi reports back to the Sony's, to the head, the CEO and president, or whatever, of Sony. Reports back. The way they describe this guy, and this is not even the book. This is like on G4. I remember G4 and said the way they describe this man was a samurai-esque older gentleman who looked like he was this grumpy old man, but he was like samurai-esque warrior type. Like, no.
Sure.
So he puts Kugaragi on a team to create the PlayStation. At that time, the PlayStation, they were going to go ahead and use 2D graphics at the time. This was going to be their first console. But they're like, no, 3D is the future. We're seeing how 3D goes. We need to make a 3D console. So instead of having a chip to render 2D graphics, they had a chip in there to render 3D graphics, but was also backwards compatible if needed for 2D.
Oh, okay.
They did that, set it out there. Nintendo and the Sega were like, what the hell? But what's a very funny moment was the head of Sony of America at the time, he went to announce, he had a stack of papers. He was supposed to have a speech. But instead of having a speech, he goes up on stage. He literally goes up on stage and goes, $2.99, and walks right off. Like, straight baller move. And this was during a trade conference. This was during a trade where you had Nintendo, Sony, all these other electronic companies announcing their new technologies and everything. So Sony announced their PlayStation, and then when they announced him to go up there, he just said $2.99 and then walks off. The crowd went ballistic. Everybody's cheering, they're laughing, and that's when you had Sega and Nintendo like, oh shit. Even though it was $100 more expensive than let's see, how more expensive was it? So the 64 was $199, PlayStation was $299, and the Saturn was $399. So it was between. The 64, the reason why it was called 64 because they had a 64-bit processor.
Right? Yeah.
And, Sega Saturn had, I don't know why, had two 32-bit processors. Saying two 32-bit processors, equals 64 bits.
It's the same.
But it was because of the architecture, it was difficult to create games and work on. So it was not a great system. And then Sony's, it was pretty decent. It was a 32-bit software, 32-bit console, but it had CDs. Sega Saturn had CDs, but the architecture was just hard to work with. And Nintendo had still had their cartridges. So a lot of people throughout time, went over to Nintendo. Went over to Sony, thus making the PlayStation 1 the very first console in history to break 100 million units sold worldwide.
Wow.
Knocking Sega off their ass.
Off the throne. Yeah.
Beating Sega, beating Nintendo. And
That's insane.
It was insane. It was crazy. Years later, the what was it? A 6th generation PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and Dreamcast. Now, Sega fixed everything, I want to say, with the Dreamcast. But what really killed them was the fact they didn't have a DVD player built into the Dreamcast. That was their last console. This is how you could officially say a company was killed during a console war. Sega rebranded themselves to only being a software only. They're not making any more hardware, and that's because PlayStation beat them. Sony Dreamcast had a marketing of $99.99. So September 9th, 1999, it was everywhere. And that was the announcement of the new console, Dreamcast. Boom, it came out. I wanted it. I was a big fan of Sonic.
Right.
So I got it. Played Sonic Adventures. I played Sonic Adventure 2. What was the other one I had? Now this was like, I love this game. I even played the hell out of the demo disc that came with it. And I was like, I want some of these games. I had fun with it. Like even some of the sports games on it looked amazing. I had all three of the, what was it, 2K99?
Oh, the first NBA 2Ks.
Yep. NBA 2K99, NFL 2K99, and MLB 2K99. Like I had all three.
The very first ones, yeah.
Yep, me, my brother, my friends will play that. Like I didn't really care for the sports games much, but my brother and my friends, they'll play it till the crack of dawn, and I'm there with them. The controller was comfortable. I even bought the memory card with the little screen on it, so you could take it to go, and whatever games that supported it, you could play on there to like level up characters, or they had mini games. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed it.
Well, for me, the sports games were like the first, like, that was the first social aspect of gaming that I think was even out there. Is like, I think, I don't know if you could, I mean, I know you could play two-player co-op before, but that was sort of the first time, like, I remember being able to, like, go head-to-head against somebody or, like, your buddies.
Yeah. For me, my games growing up was always fighting games. Me and my buddy, I remember playing. He had the Super Nintendo, and I had a Genesis, and we'll go over to each other's house every now and then and play. So one of the games we would play on the Super Nintendo was Contra Wars 3. No, Contra Alien Wars. I think it was like Contra Wars 3 Alien Wars. Oh my god, that game was so difficult. We were going nuts. Every day we'll play it. He has Super Mario World. We'll play that. We'll take turns playing that. Then I had Sonic Adventure. I had Sonic 2, Sonic and Knuckles. I had Boogerman. Oh my god, Boogerman was hilarious. I had some fantasy game that I didn't understand how to play. Like when my father bought this console for me. I guess he bought it from a garage or bought it from his friend or whoever. But this guy had like the console and a shit ton of games. So I literally had about, I want to say about 12 games, 15 games to start off with. My very first console, and I have about 12 to 15 games. And then games I will always play was Sonic and what was the other one I used to play? Sonic and Alter Beast. Beast was, now looking back, I even played Alter Beast recently. I'm like, why did I think this game was like the best game in the world? It fucking sucks. The graphics sucks. It looks all watered down. And it has no story. What the hell is this? But you know, when you're a kid, that's me and my friends used to play that one. Like, and throughout my whole years, I never bought a game for those systems. I rented games, but I never bought games.
Where did you rent games?
Blockbuster. Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Remember Blockbuster?
Yeah, I went to Hollywood Video.
Yeah, we had a Hollywood Video up here too. That was during the PlayStation 2, my PlayStation 2 and GameCube days.
Yeah, with Game Crazy.
Oh my god, that too. What else? After that, I had the main thing about the console wars for me personally, and this is not the book. This is just the console wars in general. It didn't take effect until I was in middle school when Xbox dropped. When Xbox dropped, it was Sony and Microsoft head to head. Nintendo, poof, kid game. Who wants Nintendo? Those are for kids. You want a real game? You gotta be a PlayStation 2 player or an Xbox player. I had PlayStation 2 and I had a GameCube. Did I announce I had a GameCube? No.
I always said that was the one everybody had, but nobody said anything about.
Yeah, and it sold horribly. I think GameCube in its entire lifetime sold about 20 million or 30 million units. But man, they had some good games. Metroid Prime 1 and 2 were on there. Freaking phenomenal. Looked gorgeous. Great games. I became an instant Metroid fan because of those games. I went back in time and started playing the old school version. I was like, whoa, I wish I played these as a kid.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I had even Mario Sunshine, which people say was the weakest one. That was my very first Mario game. Played it, freaking enjoyed it. I rented. I remember going to Blockbuster by my house, which was there. Remember going there and renting out Wind Waker. And I remember we had the 64 growing up. And I remember playing Ocarina of Time, Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I loved it. So when I heard about Wind Waker, I'm like, yeah, I'm excited. I want to play it. I go rent it. I see the cartoony art styles. I said, I'm returning this the same day. Return the game the same day.
Why? You didn't like it?
What threw me off was the graphics. I didn't care. A lot of people did the same thing. I wasn't the only one. And you know, when I was a kid at this time, everything was about graphics. It wasn't about gameplay or story. It was who had the best looking graphics.
Right.
That would appeal to me, and that was pleasing to me. So instead, went back, turned in that game, and my grandma was mad because we just did that. So they told her like, "Hey, you could actually just get another game. We'll swap it out for another game." I was like, "Sweet, go back." You know what game I see just staring at my face? God of War.
Oh, interesting.
So I grabbed God of War.
Yeah.
Put it into my PlayStation 2 and went bonkers with it. Especially when you're that young and you just see boobs for the first time in your life. You're just like, oh.
Right, you're like, whoa. This is great.
This is CG boobs. But yeah, like that was one of the things. And I remember fighting at the table like Xbox is better. No, PlayStation is better. No, Xbox got Halo. That's all they got. I remember even in high school and when the PS3 and the Xbox 360 came out and they were talking trash about PlayStation. I remember being a PlayStation fanboy. I'm like, what game does Microsoft have?
Yeah,
They have
I
Halo.
That's what it was. That
and
was
Gears
what
of
it was
War.
all about. It's like people either were about the Halo life or they were about the Sony life. But the Sony, in my opinion, and I'm not saying this because I was a fanboy as well, but like they always focused on creating content that was like story driven and less like gameplay driven or multiplayer driven, I guess. And when I was younger, or when you were younger, that's sort of like that was what was important to me because we had to keep ourselves occupied for a long time, right? So we had those games.
Yeah, I remember. Just remember going through all that with these kids, and I would just nail them because gaming was my everything. And even though, I just had the PlayStation 3 at that time. I didn't have an Xbox. I didn't have a Wii. My PS3 was my only console. It was the first time, like growing up, I only had one console. Because everything was hand-me-down or somebody bought like a garage sale version of it, a used one. It was never, this was the first time I got a brand new console. And I was like, holy crap, I could take it. Like I took it out the box and everything. This wasn't like, oh, here you go, and then handed me just the console. But playing this and then seeing all the games, and it's like, oh wow. And I remember just going at it with some of the kids at the lunchroom table, like in high school, arguing about which console is better. I'm like, Sony has all these different exclusives. I'm like, what is Xbox known for? Really?
Yeah.
I'm like, Halo, Gears, Forza, what else? That's pretty much it. They don't have, and it's funny because all the way till now, they didn't have great exclusive or any exclusives. Now they're just coming out the woodworks after E3. Now they're coming out the woodworks of, all these exclusives. But it took them years.
It took them decades, I would say.
Yeah, and they started the same time as Sony. And Sony was pulling out exclusives left and right. Like I was naming games back in the PS3 era and PS2 era that Xbox never had, and they're like, "Oh, those are kid games." Blah, blah, blah. Like, no, these are great damn games.
They're great games, but people just like they didn't get to experience them because they only had one console.
Yeah. How was your table? How was your lunchroom table battles like?
My lunchroom table battles. I don't know. I think I having a PS2, and I mean I had a PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3 pretty much immediately when they all came out. So it was more so like I don't know. I was stoked to like chat about it, and I was stoked to like I remember I think in my one of my video classes or digital photography, I was like taking pictures of Uncharted
Yeah.
and like using Photoshop on them for the first time.
Yeah.
And people would come up to me and they'd be like, "Oh, what's that?" And I was like, "Dude, it's a video game." And they're like, "What? It's so cool. It looks so real." So it was, I don't know. I never really had arguments with people. It was more so just like, "Yeah, you should really go play this game. It's great."
Yeah. I remember playing Uncharted, the very first one. I was really shocked when I saw it. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I saw the just the trailer to it, I'm like, wow, it looks pretty good. And I started watching the gameplay, and then when it dropped,
Mm-hmm.
I just loved the story and everything. It just reminded me of like Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider.
Mm-hmm.
Later down the line, we had Uncharted 2, which was to me like the best fucking game out there, along with one of the best multiplayers. I just didn't
Yeah.
like how they really try to expand on it and change it. I really like just how basic it was in Uncharted 2, and they're never gonna go back to that.
Yeah, that was the pinnacle. I'm looking at PlayStation 2 exclusive. Oh, Gran Turismo 4.
Yep.
Dude, I played that thing forever. Like,
Yeah. Gran Turismo came out on the PlayStation 1.
yeah, that was the most that was the biggest selling game on the PlayStation.
Yeah, Polyphony Digital, when they dropped the Gran Turismo. That's all they're known for. Just Gran Turismo. And what had me laughing was somebody was talking crap about, I think the CEO, president, whatever, founder of Polyphony Digital, saying the PlayStation should be able to offer all these different tools for your games. Like you can make anything. And basically, he was like, this designer was trying to describe like all other games, and somebody
Hmm.
commented like, "Oh wow," because all you guys do is just create a racing game, which is true. That's all they make is just racing games. Like, I would like to see one day Polyphony Digital, because whatever engine they are using for their car games, it is
It's
possible. It's killing it.
killing the game.
Like, what the hell are you doing over there? Typing?
No, I'm looking at all the PlayStation 2 games.
Oh. Um, Lost my damn train of focus. But even Forza.
It-
Forza looks good. The only thing that Forza has above Gran Turismo is the selection of vehicles. Is
mhm.
very equally balanced amongst different makers. Where Gran Turismo is a huge margin of Japanese vehicles versus others.
Right.
So like American,
I mean, they had every single like car ever made in Japan.
yeah, and then some new vehicles as well. But it's like everything was just a Japanese made vehicle, where Forza was more based, which was equally balanced amongst all vehicles. So of
Hmm.
course you had your Ford. Oh shit.
Oh, Siphon Filter. Just found that one.
Oh my god, they need to make another
Dude,
one.
dude, they were so good.
They need to make another siphon filter.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like not only exclusives, but you're talking about these are franchises that like were just born and we've had for like so long that you know people Xbox people. Oh,
Telefono.
that's gonna ring again. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
One moment at a Compton Nerd.
Thank you for joining us on the Incompetence. We're experiencing technical difficulties right now. So as this moment as we wait, Please enjoy the lovely sounds of my voice.
Do you talk like that all the time?
All the time.
You should.
I can't wait for them to listen to that point and be like, this idiot.
Incompetent nerds. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these franchises were just created in the PlayStation realm because they had
Yeah.
all these like great publishers.
If you look at it, a lot of these games were developed, like, to this day, they all started on PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had some of the newer coming out on PlayStation 3. Now, I wish they would come out with another Siphon filter. I was a big fan when I was a kid because it reminded me a little bit of Metal Gear.
Mm-hmm.
Metal Gear changed the game because it was literally solo. You were literally just stealth. You had to be stealthy the whole time. And I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it. Like, there were some parts I went throughout the whole game just being super stealthy, and there was other parts when I went in there just gun blazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was usually that, sometimes is usually fun. I played Metal Gear 1 many times. I played Metal Gear 2 many times. Hell, Final Fantasy 7, which when it came out on the PlayStation, so many people played it that it was considered like one of the best games in history.
Dude, people are playing Final Fantasy 7 now, and it's just like, where have you been?
Yeah, they're playing either the remake for the PC or the newer version that came out, which was the PC version, with the graphics were slightly upgraded. They look a little bit
Mm-hmm.
better, but they're still like the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we just got word from E3, the Final Fantasy VII remake, and it's just I'm gonna actually wait. I'm gonna wait until all the episodes are out, and then I'm gonna buy the whole package.
The package, yeah, that's the way to go.
I'm gonna buy the whole package and just be like, I'm gonna not have a life for about a week and a half. I still haven't beat Final Fantasy 15. I'm like a level 100.
Ah, I see. You'll
It's
get there.
no. Here's the thing, and my guy hates that I did this. I just kept like I'm at this continent, and I could go to this other continent to continue the story. But if I do that, I can't come back. So I
Mm-hmm.
just been exploring, doing missions, leveling up. I'm like, I'm not gonna go ahead and move to the next continent until I'm a level 100.
Mm.
I just made it to a level 100, which was the cap at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Then then Square Enix came out with an update saying, "Hey, now the new level cap is 150." I told my guy, "Time for me to go for another 50 rounds." He goes, "Stop, just play the game." I'm like, "For what? I'm gonna go through there and just wipe it." I'm like, "I'm just wipe everybody as I play through it."
Yeah, exactly. And then so I just looked up the top 10 games on PS3 that are exclusives. Valkyrie Chronicles is number 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's that was by Sega, I believe, RPG. Resistance, Fall of Man,
Oh my god, I remember that one.
right? When it first came out, right?
Yep.
Ratchet and Clank, Tools of Destruction, Little Big Planet, the first Uncharted was number 6. Infamous, that was a new franchise
Yep.
developed in PS3. Killzone 2, one of my favorites of all time. Wipeout, which was very good PlayStation exclusive that I was a fan of since the PS1 days.
Wipeout. Oh yeah.
The rocket ships, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That was my F F1 F10 racing fix.
yep, yep. Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots,
That was pretty good.
and the obviously the number one game to own if you have a PS3. We already talked about it. Uncharted 2.
Uncharted. Dude, Metal Gear 4. Did you ever play that one?
I did. It was great.
How many times did you play it?
Oh, at least 4.
Same here. Here's a funny story. Um, on Metal Gear 4, I played it all the way. I was close to the end. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember, because I was in high school, and I graduated. I'm done, and I just finished working. I quit a job that I was working on. And I had some money. I'm like, I'm gonna buy this game. So I bought it. Started playing it. We were going on a family trip to Puerto Rico,
Mm-hmm.
and my goal was before I go on this trip, I want to beat this game.
Hmm.
So I kept going for it, and endless nights. Even on the night of our flight, I'm still going, and I just can't because there's like over 82 hours of freaking footage. Okay,
Yep.
I'm exaggerating, but it is. I think it's like 40
It's a lot.
hours of footage, like in this game of just cinematic.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the first movie quote unquote games.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. So finally make it to the end, which I didn't know was the end. It was the boat scene when you're on the boat fighting these other
Mm-hmm.
enemies. So I leave to Puerto Rico for a week, have a ball, come back. I'm like, I gotta beat this game, and something tells me I'm at the end. I turn on my PlayStation, start playing. I sit back, relax, start playing. Guess what? 20 minutes later, I was at the end of the game. Like all I needed was 20 more minutes. Oh my god, Mag! Remember Mag? That one was exclusive on PlayStation. That was because it was created by the same folks at SOCOM.
Yeah, that was one of your faves.
Oh my god, yeah. Do you remember? Were you there when we all voted that one Canadian kid out the chat, out the team?
Oh, what?
Oh, that was to invite you. You weren't there. It was to invite you to the team. So it was me. So it was the whole Q Next squad. You were coming on, and somebody else was in our squad.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, oh shit, Marcus, we gotta get Mark on here. All right, cool. So you're trying to join us. We voted him out, and all you hear is like, "Hey, were you trying to vote me out?" Hey, Jordan. Well, first of all, you're Canadian, and second of all, you suck. And and it was Jordan who had the last say to knock him out. So we kicked him out the squad, and then you joined.
That's hilarious.
I died when Jordan was like, first of all, you're Canadian, and second, you suck. I'm like, oh, I fucking love Jordan.
Canadian.
But yeah, console wars, dude. But I want to say in total, let's get back on subject on the console wars. I want to say in total, it kind of like it's still there, but it's not as big as it was, especially the marketing towards each console. Like they don't shoot at each other anymore. They don't, use like certain taglines to show you like, yeah, this guy suck or whatever. And even on like Twitter and stuff, like when Xbox announced, when PlayStation released their game and Xbox released their game, you see Sony, you see like PlayStation and Xbox Twitter, official Twitters, just basically saying, "Have a good launch," and then Xbox dropped theirs, and Sony's like, "Have a great launch, babe." Like it was like the funniest stuff, but it was also like, "Hey, these now everybody's friends." Even now with Microsoft and Sony working with each other, Sony working with Microsoft, giving them the hardware that they need for certain processes, like the imaging, their imaging capture, like hardware, and then you have Microsoft offering out for Sony for their xCloud gaming, for cloud gaming. So now you have
Yeah.
these companies which were rivals are now
We're
working
now working
together.
together. Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of rivalries in like at least in 2019, in like a broader sense, is just like dumb because like people realize like you can still make money
Mm.
and share your shit
Yeah,
because there's no reason not to if it's gonna make everything better. You know what I mean?
it will be shocking that one will come to one day is like it doesn't matter if you get a console or not, if you get a PlayStation or an Xbox, because maybe one day is like, oh, you could play XCloud and PlayStation, or you could, you know, brave the new Spider-Man 2 game on your Xbox.
Right. So
Sony's gonna
would
be like, I'm still
you
making money.
right? Would you still get a PlayStation 5 over a, I don't know, let's say a computer?
Well, first, I already have a computer. I still have my desktop that's collecting dust under my bed. I got my MacBook, and then I have my PlayStation 4. Hell the fuck yes, I'm getting a PlayStation 5 because of backwards compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
because I think when the backwards compatibility, it'll help. What you call it? Play. And there's words that both the Xbox and there's words that Sony is selling the PS5 at a loss. Same thing as what happened with the PS3. I guess they're trying to make it as advanced as possible, but also as affordable as possible.
Interesting. Yeah,
Well,
because I feel like they're trying to. I feel like at that point, based on everything we just said, you're gonna have to appeal to your fans, not necessarily appeal to something that's gonna make money if everything's the same.
yeah.
For lack of
Also,
better
a lot of these like Sony, Microsoft, they don't make a lot of money on hardware. They make it with the software.
software, right?
So by even though they're offering, because I think what was they were making, I think it was like $8 for every PlayStation 4 that was sold.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they were making back. That was so out of the whatever millions of PlayStation 4s, $8 was for each of their system. That's how much they got
Mm-hmm.
back.
Right.
But where they got most of their money back was software. That's why that counted. That's why when they were, come out with these exclusives left and right, these exclusives are selling left, they're selling like hotcakes. That's when they were making their money. So I feel like
Right.
it's gonna happen again. Hopefully, it's not that it doesn't hit like the PS3 hit, but I feel like they learned their lesson with that one. Yeah, they're selling at a loss, but I think they're gonna pull it out. They're definitely gonna make another win this year. I want to say
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft is probably gonna be up there with them because I
Mm-hmm.
can officially say Microsoft won last year's console war. Well, last generation's console war.
With
With the
the
360.
360, or isn't that with the 360?
Yep.
Wasn't that you mean
The Xbox
one?
360. No, Xbox 360 is when I want to say they won that console war.
Wait.
Um,
Well, what's the PlayStation 4 equivalent?
no, it was PS3 and 360. Remember?
No, it was Xbox came out with the PlayStation 2.
I'm talking
So
about.
Xbox
I'm talking
360
about
came out with the
first time
PlayStation.
Microsoft won the console war was with the
Mm-hmm.
Xbox 360 against the
Okay.
PS3 and the Wii. A lot of folks don't count the Wii. Yeah, the Wii sold hundreds of millions of units,
Mm-hmm.
but when it came to software sales, it just blowed. It just
Right.
you have over 100 million units out there, but you're only selling like 5 or 10 million copies of Mario and all this other stuff.
Right.
I think they didn't make that mistake with the Switch,
The Switch. Right.
and that was because when you got the Wii, you got a free game, and a lot of people bought the Wii just for that free game, and that was it.
Right.
So officially, Xbox won that generation.
Mm-hmm.
The generation before that, with the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube, PS2 clearly won with the most units sold worldwide with over 200, slightly over, I want to say 200 million units sold, and just a shit ton of games. PlayStation won the other one before that one too, with the PlayStation 1 with over 100 million units sold and a crap ton of games.
Mm-hmm.
PS3 lost horribly because of what their image was and how they were trying to create this console. And they also made it difficult for developers. PS4 won this generation, and now is to see who will win the next.
What's the score? 3-1.
Yeah, nah, I think that's a
You
good rep.
in tank side, and you're just going off of sales alone
Yeah,
of units and games.
yeah, units and games. Like I said, not many people count Nintendo Wii as a winner of that console war, all because yes, it did sell a bunch of units, but it did not sell enough games. And also, that system was known for just nothing but shitty games everywhere, just
Stupid.
everywhere. Where at least with PlayStation and Xbox, you had some decent quality games, even though some didn't suck, but you had some decent quality games, and they just sold millions and millions of copies. Yeah. That's why I can't wait for can't wait for the next generation. Can't wait to see it and see what happens. See what they're offering. Like, what's the new technology? They were seeing like all these numbers of teraflops and gigahertz and megahertz and all this other stuff. It's like, all right, cool. Those numbers are great and all, but I want to see it in action.
Yeah. What is it gonna equate to?
Exactly.
We shall see, man. Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. And with that, I say this is a good place to stop.
That's a great place.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining Incompetent Nerds. I am your host, Hank, with Mark, and we say goodbye and good night.
See you next week.
Peace.